excited for a fun show today featuring two of my favorite things in life, wine and cheese. Thanks so much for joining us today on Uncork PA. I'm your host, Missy Wilson, a second generation winery owner at Sutter Ridge Vineyards and a PA wine lover. So, yesterday was actually National Wine and Cheese Day, and you can definitely enjoy wine on its own and you can enjoy cheese on its own. But when you put both of these together, you actually can make some of the most beautiful pairings. A fun fact, Pennsylvania actually ranks fifth in the country for dairy production and has more raw milk cheesemakers than any other state. Over the past 2 decades, milk has increasingly been channeled into cheese production, and both in the names and the styles that we're familiar with, like cheddars and Colbys, in addition to some unique styles that take that classic technique and kind of reformat them a little bit. With the many creameries throughout the state, you can always find a Pennsylvania winery close by. The Pennsylvania Winery Association's website, pennsylvaniawine.com, has a map of all the wineries throughout the state. You can enter in an address, whether it's your address, an address of a creamery, or a location that you're interested in visiting, and it will list all the wineries that are nearby. With just a click, you can head to their websites and check out their hours, the types of wines that they produce, and any upcoming events that they might have as well. Today we're going to be talking all things cheese, of course with a little bit of wine on the side. First, we're going to be talking with Stephanie Angstadt of Valley Milkhouse Creamery located in Ole, Berks County. Well, we'll find out a little bit more about what goes into the process of cheese making and answer some questions that people might normally have about cheese. And then we're going to be chatting with Jamie Rubin, a somm, who's going to teach us a little bit more about pairing wines and cheeses and what we should look for and some suggestions for something to try in the future. So now that we are talking wine and cheese, the best place to go is to talk with a cheesemaker specifically. Today, we're so lucky to have with us Steph Angstadt of Valley Milkhouse. Steph has been making cheese at this Ole Valley farm since the spring of 2014 and has won many awards from those, including the Pennsylvania Farm Show, for some of her cheeses like Clover, Thistle, and Bluebell. Thanks so much for joining us today, Steph.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, definitely. So you've been making cheese for over 10 years now. How did you actually get into the cheese making business?
I started making cheese actually as a home cheese maker. I always loved cheese, and I had a friend who was interested in beer brewing at the time, back when I was living in New York City in a tiny apartment in my early 20s. And he took me to a homebrew supply shop in Brooklyn, and I picked up a home cheese making kit. And kind of the rest is history. I just started dabbling with milk and curds and whey and really fell in love with the process. Fast track to a few years later, I decided to quit my job in the city and go work for a goat dairy out in Colorado. I really went off the rails, as I like to say. And that's where I fell in love with doing cheese making on a more commercial scale.
So, as with wine, a lot of people know wine comes from grapes. Everybody knows that cheese comes from milk, but that's pretty much the extent of everybody's knowledge. So, can you give us like a quick and easy tutorial of how you start with the milk and you end up with beautiful cheese?
Yeah, it is a mystery to a lot of people. So, best way to kind of think about cheese making on a very theoretical level is we're harvesting the fat and protein from milk. That's what we're doing to make cheese. And we do that through two steps. We do a fermentation process where we start teasing out some of the flavor in the milk. And then the next step is coagulation. And that's where we actually add our enzyme, which curdles the milk and gives you curds and whey. And so in the final steps, we're harvesting those curds in the form of different shapes, draining off the whey, and we are left with the beautiful fat and protein and minerals that are in milk. And so we basically are extracting the solids from a gallon of milk. That's cheese making in a nutshell.
Wonderful. So there's actually like infinite numbers and versions and types of cheeses out there. You have fresh cheese, you have aged cheese, some of them have the bloomy rind to it, you have blue cheese. There's so many more. Can you tell us like a little bit of the difference of what distinguishes a few of the typical types of cheeses and what types of flavors and texture you might expect from some of those types?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this is the most common question that I get in my cheese making classes, which is, Steph, how do you start off with a gallon of milk and end up with hundreds of varieties of cheese, all from that one ingredient. And that's really the magic of it, is that you're tweaking these sort of tiny details along the way. Cheesemaking is all in the details. So you're sort of manipulating timing and temperature, moisture, salt, and that just kind of gets you to a wheel of cheese. And then it's going into the aging room and getting all sorts of different environmental controls, different rind treatments. And so that's how, for example, you can end up with something like a camembert or a brie, something that has a white mold rind and is super soft and oozy, versus something like a hard aged, 3-year Parmesan, which actually still just, they both just come from a gallon of milk, and cultures and rennet are kind of play a small role in it. So I guess let me give you an example of how you might end up with something like a soft ripened cheese, like a bloomy rind. So we're taking our curds and whey, stirring them really gently, and we're harvesting the curds in a basket. And what we're doing when we're making a soft cheese like that is we're actually bringing in some of the moisture into our baskets, because we want softness and suppleness in the cheese. And on day 2, we're salting that wheel, and then we're putting it in an aging room. We're putting it in an environment where that white mold wants to populate the surface. So we actually add white mold spores to those cheeses so that that mold and yeast can grow on the surface. And, part of our job as cheesemakers is to change people's minds about mold and yeast. It's beneficial. We add it. Absolutely eat the rind. We work very hard to cultivate these beautiful natural rinds because so much of the flavor is concentrated there on the surface. So we love making those bloomy rind cheeses here because it's such a beautiful physical transformation.
So then so if you let that cheese, like the longer it sits, what kind of happens to the cheese the longer it sits?
Yeah,
So
good
aging
question.
versus like a non-aged cheese.
Good question. Right. So we have a fresh salted wheel of cheese that's going into this cellar environment, 55 degrees Fahrenheit, 95% humidity. Think of a basement. And it's living there, and the yeast and molds out over the course of 10 days start populating the surface of the cheese. And when they grow in, the cheese develops this sort of white fluffy cloud. And then there's this enzymatic process where that rind now starts breaking down the fat and protein that we've harvested in that wheel of cheese. So first part of cheese making is fermentation, but this second part where we're aging the cheese, it's sort of like a controlled decay, like a controlled breakdown of that fat and protein that we harvested. And the molds and the yeasts that grow on the surface of the cheese, they help us break down the cheese. So rather than having a solid structure of fat and protein, those molds actually break it down and break it down and break it down into different components until we actually end up getting a really soft, supple paste. So it's only a few weeks. It's actually a wonderful physical transformation, but because the wheels are usually made in a small format, it doesn't take that long for the rind to kind of work its way through the whole cheese and break it down and make it soft and supple.
Okay, so you kind of answered the question, do you eat the rind? So you eat the rind definitely on soft cheeses. How about hard cheeses? So hard cheeses sometimes have that rind on it too. You definitely go for the rind on hard cheeses as well?
I always say give it a taste because it's like a bonus tasting experience. Sometimes those rinds on the cheese are so delicious. It's where all the flavor concentrates. But sometimes they can be bitter, or they can, the rind is pretty rugged. They're basically just, what is a cheese rind? It's just the dried surface of the cheese. And so it's drier, and so it's more rugged. And so sometimes it can be hard to digest, but you always want to just at least give it a taste and see what it's all about, especially for the cheeses that we're, washing the rinds. One of our cheeses that we make is called Lady Slipper. We wash the rind with cider lees from Fricon orchards. It's delicious. It's yeasty. You get a little bit of the apple flavor. Why would you miss out on that? So unless it's a waxed rind or a bandaged rind, I always recommend tasting it and at least giving it a shot. And when we're tasting cheese, it's always nice to give a taste of the inside of the cheese first and then try the rind. Since the rind tends to be a little bit stronger in flavor, you don't want to overpower your taste buds. So that's the way we like to experience tasting these cheeses.
So, what are some other questions that you get a lot of times at farmers market or when people find out you're a cheesemaker? What are the typical questions you tend to get, and are there any misconceptions that you have to dispel on a regular basis?
Well, eating, questions about the rind are big ones. Questions about actually raw milk versus pasteurized, that's another big one. We, at our creamery, we do both. Any cheeses that are going to be sold within 2 months of age, we legally in this state have to pasteurize the milk first. But any cheeses that are aged for over 2 months, you can leave raw because pathogens can't survive past 2 months. So that's our safeguard, an additional safeguard for making raw milk cheeses. And so you can ask around, but you shouldn't make the assumption necessarily that all local handmade cheeses are made with raw milk. We make quite a few pasteurized ones as well. And we also have to be sure that we talk to people about the benefits of raw milk cheese. Most cheesemakers are huge advocates of raw milk cheese because when you leave the milk raw and unprocessed, you get all the nice, beautiful native flora, bacteria in the milk, which leads to beautiful flavors, of course, and textures. But it also, think yogurt, it sort of inoculates your gut with beneficial bacteria. And so we want that. Cheese is teeming with life. I mean, similar to wine, from the moment you put it in your mouth, it's still fermenting. There's still enzymatic activity. And so it's nice to think of especially fresh local cheeses as your best bet for getting the most alive cheeses in your gut.
So you're part of this amazing organization that brings cheesemakers from across the entire state called the Pennsylvania Cheese Guild. Can you tell us a little bit more about the goals and aspects of what this organization does?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a good tie into sort of what you were asking about in the previous question, which is about myths. So part of what we're trying to do in the Pennsylvania Cheese Guild is to get people thinking more locally about cheese. I think a lot of people go to the grocery store, they're looking for a Gouda, they're looking for a Parmesan, they're following a recipe. Can I find a feta and some packaging? And to me, it's such a pity because actually we have all of those cheeses that are made right here in our backyard, and they actually win national and international awards. And as I was saying, they're teeming with life because they're made fresh. They haven't been shipped from across the state or across the country or across the ocean. They, were probably made by hand and made from beautiful, healthy cows. And so part of what we're trying to do in the Cheese Guild is get people thinking in that mindset. Like, hey, think locally, because there are grocery stores that stock local cheese. Certainly your regional cheese shops and food co-ops, those are our best customers. They stock loads of local cheese. Go up to the counter, look for the local sticker, ask the cheesemonger there, anything that's local, anything that's fresh. Even if you're looking for a Parmesan and you can't find a local alternative, maybe there's a nice hard cheese that you can find that's made in your county. That would be a good grading cheese and have those same sort of nutty characteristics. I think we have different genres of cheese that are they're pretty open categories. So, for example, I really love époisse. I love these stinky wash-dried French cheeses.
Those are my favorite too.
So you have the same weakness.
Yes.
Have you ever had, for example, Bertrand Hills Farms Red Cat? It's a beautiful, stinky, wash-dried cheese. It's made right here in Chester County. And it's so funky, it'll stink up your fridge. You'll never even believe that it wasn't made in France. So here we are in the Cheese Guild, just trying to make people aware of all the diversity of cheese that we have in this area. And the other part of it too is to bring cheesemakers together, because I'm sure it's similar in the wine community on the production side, that it's very challenging, and we try to stick together. So part of the guild, what we're trying to do is bring education to our cheesemakers, keep fine-tuning our skills. We bring in guest speakers from all over the world to lecture us about how to improve our craft and improve our recipes. and we share resources. So it's a nice collaborative environment. So we have both this internal side where we try to help each other in the industry, and we have the consumer facing side where we're really trying to educate the consumer about the beauty and the glory of the Pennsylvania cheese scene and how it's really flourishing.
So October is an amazing month because not only is it it's Pennsylvania Wine Month, but it's also Pennsylvania Cheese Month, which obviously we know wine and cheese are perfect together. So you guys have a lot of stuff going on that people should be on the lookout during October. So what is part of what the Cheese Guild is going to be doing during the month of October?
Right. So we're trying to do as many just basically a public consumer facing events that we can in the month of October. We sort of selected the month. It's perfect that it's aligned with wine and the wine month. But we chose it as just a really good month to highlight our all the bounty of cheeses that we're making in the state. And so I think the best thing to do is actually go onto our website, pacheeseguild.org, and you can look up the events that are happening in your region. So it might be a wine and cheese tasting in your backyard, in your neighborhood. It might be a farm tour where you get to meet the cows. There might be some cool pairing events that are happening in the city at the cheese shops in your city. So there's going to be lots of that going on, and there's also going to be some virtual events. So the best thing to do is basically just check out our website, and it's actually the list is going to continue to develop. So give it another month or two, and that calendar will be really fleshed out with events happening in your area.
Perfect. So if people have not tried your cheese yet, Steph, which they absolutely need to do, Clover is one of mine and my kids' favorite ever since the beginning. It's this beautiful soft cheese that is like creamy. You can just like throw it on a cracker with some jelly and enjoy it, or you can like zhuzh it up. But where can they find some additional information about all the varieties of cheeses that you have on site and where they can actually find it to purchase as well?
Yeah. So one of the best ways to get a feel for all the cheeses that we make is actually through our subscription. We have a CSA called Collective Creamery, and we do it in collaboration with Bertrand Hills Farm, who is we call them our sister creamery in Chester County. But it's two women cheesemakers. We've partnered up to basically once a month give you a distribution of a variety of the cheeses that we make. So by the end of the season, you sort of had everything that we produce and a little extra. And it's a really nice introduction to local cheeses here in the eastern part of the state if you haven't tried ours yet. And we deliver to neighborhoods throughout Philadelphia. We also ship across the state to New Jersey. So you can go on our website, collectivecreamery.com. That's a good way to see where there might be pickup sites near you. And then for Valley Milkhouse cheeses, we have on our website, we have a list of retailers that we work with. We're all throughout Philadelphia. We also ship to the western part of the state. We work with some cheese shops in Pittsburgh. And so you can find a local retailer. It would really be the best way to do it. And we also have a couple of farmers markets in Philly. So lots of ways to find us and our cheeses.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Steph, and passing on all this information. I feel like people can get really intimidated with cheese, similar to wine, because there's so many different varieties and so many different styles, and they don't know where to start. And you've definitely passed on some great information and let them feel a lot more comfortable about going out and finding a Pennsylvania cheese and just digging right in and trying something a little bit different and new. So thanks so much, Steph.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yep, no problem. So, if you're looking to, like we were talking about with Steph, if you're looking to find those Pennsylvania made cheeses and you're not sure where to start, Steph had given us a few examples of places to go. My suggestion is the perfect place to start is your local farmers market. There are farmers market all throughout the entire state, and a lot of farmers markets actually carry local creameries in their list of vendors. You can go to your local farmers market website or Facebook page, and they should have the list of vendors available, and then you can check to see what kind of cheeses they carry. If a creamery isn't actually at the farmers market, sometimes another vendor will actually carry local cheeses as well. There's a lot of those small retail shops that Steph was talking about too, such as like Kimberton Whole Foods, Philly Food Works. There's Wild Purveyors in Pittsburgh, Central Wedge in Carlisle, Crooked Row Farm in Orfield. Across the state, there's all these smaller retail stores that really focus on locally produced items that you can definitely find some great local cheese there. As Steph also mentioned, you love your fresh veggies. CSAs, actually, a lot of them, not only through the collective creamery that she had mentioned, but a lot of them actually offer a cheese share as part of their portion. So when you go ahead and pick up your veggies, you can actually pick up your cheese at the same time. Some people, it's just easier. You live in the middle of nowhere, nothing's close by. Ordering online is available. Right now, we're kind of in the heat of the summer, so you're going to want to see what the policies are with their shipping in the summertime and the heat. But a lot of creameries have direct shipping straight from the creameries themselves, such as Caputo Brothers, which is in Spring Grove, and they're an Italian style cheesemaker. They have mozzarella, fresh ricotta, provolone, and then you also have Conebella Farms in Elverson with Colbys and cheddars, spreads, curds, things like that. Some of the larger purveyors actually carry these cheeses and do shipping too. Things such as De Bruno Brothers, which is very popular on the eastern side of the state. And then Chantel's Cheese Shop in Pittsburgh actually has them available for shipping as well. In addition, there's actually this really great store in Honeybrook called Farm Fromage, which specializes in Pennsylvania cheeses, and they have over a dozen different Pennsylvania cheesemakers that you can order specific cheeses or actually do gift boxes as well. I would definitely recommend taking some time to do a little bit of research and find that local farmers market, that small retail shop, or that online store when you can try a variety of Pennsylvania made cheeses. So up next, we were going to have with us our friend Jamie, who is a Somm. Unfortunately, he's having a little bit of an issue getting on today. So I would definitely recommend, if we can't pull him on for the show, check out Jamie because he is a Somm who has a bunch of different things going on. He has a podcast that he co-hosts called You're Gonna Need a Bigger Bottle, which pairs actually movies with wine, which is kind of fun to listen to. And then he also gets together with a variety of different colleagues on social media, especially Instagram, called Summation Live, where they talk about various wines and kind of bring it down to an easy level for everyone to enjoy. So we had asked Jamie to give us some suggestions for great wine and cheese pairings that are definitely Pennsylvania wines and Pennsylvania cheeses that are kind of pulled together, looking at cheeses from across the state and wines from across the state. So some of the suggestions that he had actually pulled together for us is there's this great little creamery, well, not so little, on the west side of the state, closer to Pittsburgh, called Goat Rodeo. And they have actually just recently won some really great awards for their cheeses. They do a variety of goat smokes cheese, so they go everywhere from soft to aged and hard cheeses. His recommendation would be if you want to go ahead and grab that Goat Rodeo Chev, which is a fresh, soft goat milk cheese, a little bit tangy, and he suggests to go to Vox Venetti Winery and grab a bottle of their Sauvignon Blanc. Vox Venetti is an estate-grown winery in Christiana. They're open for tastings on weekends by reservation, and they work on really focusing on growing their grapes in their vineyard and producing amazing wines from everything that they're growing on site. So the nice little brightness of that Sauvignon Blanc that you typically tend to get, that nice little bit of acid, works really well with the tanginess of goat cheese. And that's actually something that, if you think about pairing wines and cheeses together, you definitely want to find wines that have similar flavor profiles and similar aspects to the cheese itself. So the newer, fresher cheeses, you're going to want to look for the newer, fresher wines. So you're going to tend to go with white wines for those really nice, soft, fresh cheeses, whether it's goat's milk, cow's milk, sheep's milk. If you're looking to do something a little bit older and a little bit more aged, his suggestion would be moving on to that the farm at Doe Run. They produce St. Malachai's cheese, which is a little bit more of that aged cheese. It is a cow's milk cheese, and they have a variety of cow's milk on their farm. They're located actually in Chester County. And the best option for this one, it's a little bit, like I said, it's because it's aged a little bit longer, you're going to get a little of that tanginess is kind of going to soften a little bit. You get a little bit more creaminess that comes in with it. And a really great pairing for this would be your Wayvine winery, which is located in Nottingham in southern PA, with their Carmine Rosé. So the great part about rosé is you're getting really those nice fresh berry flavors from your red grapes, but it's in a crisp, refreshing style, like a white wine. So because the St. Malachi isn't extremely aged and it isn't very old, it's actually a really great pairing with a rosé. And finally, if you're looking for that really nice red wine and a cheese to go with the red wine, his suggestion was actually to go with Birch Run Hills Farms, which is located in Chester Springs. And I had mentioned that Steph actually, it's like her sister farm with them at Valley Milkhouse. And he wants to pair that Fat Cat with our Pinot Noir. So at Sutter Ridge Vineyards. So basically, a little bit of a heavier cheese, a little bit more of an aged cheese, you can now start to pull in reds. This isn't a completely aged cheese, so you're not getting a lot of that nutty feel that comes across with it. So you still want to go a little bit lighter on the reds. Those really old, aged, nutty, bold flavored cheeses, the best direction to go with them are your deep, dark, heavy reds. So your blue cheeses, your aged Goudas, things along those routes, that's when you really want to start to pull in those heavy Cabernet Francs, your Tannats, anything with Petit Verdot, Syrah, that really nice, full, heavy feeling. The key really is for cheese, and I like to say this all the time, there really is no wrong pairing, and you shouldn't get intimidated with pairing wines and cheeses or pairing any food with with wine. The key to it is you know what you enjoy. So if you enjoy a wine, go ahead and pull it out and see if it works with that cheese that you've been trying and or you just picked up from a Pennsylvania made creamery, and just really see how those two work together. So it's a fun experience, and you can never go wrong with something you like. Even if I say pair that heavy, sharp blue cheese with a big heavy red, if you don't like big heavy reds, don't go in that direction. Find the wine that you like, find the cheese that you like, and then you can just make that into an amazing pairing together. So we hope that you took a little bit out of this wonderful program today about wine and cheese. I hope that you didn't learn only about pairing the cheeses, but also finding out that there's a cheese in Pennsylvania that is perfect for you. So a great place to start looking for that perfect cheese would be going to either your local farmer's market or heading over to the Pennsylvania Cheese Guild website at phacheeseguild.org. If you're looking for information in that area near that creamery you're really dying to try out, or you're planning on your next vacation spot, don't look any further than PennsylvaniaWine.com. There's plenty of different information about wineries, wine varietals, tastings, and so much more. Join us next time as we visit the Bucks County Wine Trails. Plus, we start talking about National Pinot Noir Day. It's a great time to plan that getaway, and you can also start to learn a little bit more about the complexities of Pinot Noir itself. Join us on Uncorked PA live the second and fourth Tuesdays of every month, starting at noon on both Facebook and YouTube. If you can't join us live, you can always watch any of the programs whenever's most convenient for you. Plus, if you'd rather just listen to the program, you can find Uncorked PA on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite place to stream your podcast. We want to thank the Pennsylvania Winery Association for supporting this program with grant money from the PLCB, and we look forward to sharing more hidden gems of the Pennsylvania wine world with you next time. Thanks so much and have a great day.